Hello and welcome to Byjus Exam Prep IAS. I welcome you all to today's The Hindu analysis. But before we go deeper into this, there are a couple of important announcements. We have for you this Saturday a very important workshop where we will be discussing with you the best way to prepare for the current affairs for the 2023 UPSC Civil Services Examination. So if you are someone who's planning to write the 2023 attempt or even beyond that, it's a very important workshop for you. This will be live on Saturday, that is the 23rd of July at 6 p.m. The link to register for the workshop is given in the description of the video. Do come in large numbers because all your questions with regards to preparation will be answered live here. Also, on Friday, we have the next Explained series session where we will be discussing with you in detail the significance of the I2U2 summit. We'll discuss why exactly is India so excited about it, how will this fit in the long-term policy plans of India, so on and so forth. Now let's begin the analysis for the Hindu newspaper today with the first article that focuses on a very interesting topic. The topic is that the schools in India are not just about education. The schools in India are also a place where we can actually target children by giving them a lot more because they are assembled at one single place. Meaning that the health services specifically, which the government of India must deliver to all the children, for those, the schools can be a great way forward. However, in the past, what has happened is we have neglected the fact that schools are also meant to provide healthcare for the children. Whenever we talk of healthcare, we usually think that this is only with regards to certain diseases. But in schools, that is not the case. When we talk about healthcare and health related requirements for school children, what we really mean to say is giving them solutions for problems such as unhealthy dietary habits, irregular sleep patterns, lack of physical activity amongst many children because they are so addicted to technology now, dental or mental health, ear problems, sexual behavior, use of tobacco, substances, other kind of addiction, etc. There have been multiple studies that have shown that if you tackle the problem of tobacco or these kind of substances early on in a child's age, there is a much larger probability that you will be able to tackle this problem and the child will not fall for these things. That is why schools become extremely important. Now, as you know, because of the COVID-19 pandemic, the schools across the country were locked up for a long time. Now that the schools have opened up in multiple states, we see a lot of different programs running up. But as per the author, most of those programs are only talking about education to give as much learning to the children as possible. While that is good, we cannot ignore the fact that these couple of years have also been very detrimental for children's health as well. And that is why we should focus on that. An example can be seen in Delhi. In March 2022, the Delhi government began 20 school health clinics with a promise of setting up more. Although the promise of setting up more is in the future and has not been implemented right now, but the same can be done by other states across the country as well. The author here also has given a history of how the school health services in India have evolved. The first record of school health services in India goes back to 1909. This is when the Baroda presidency started the medical examination of school children to identify if they have certain problems. Then we had the famous Bhore Committee in 1946, which observed that the school health services in India are very underdeveloped. After independence, the first major incident with respect to school education and health came up in 1953 when the Secondary Education Committee of the Government of India recommended a comprehensive policy dealing with school health and school feeding programs. Now, again, as I said, even today, when we talk about school health, our focus is only on either giving food to the children under the midday meal scheme or ensuring that the children in the schools have vaccinations and other kind of things. But we don't really focus on all these problems that most of the children are facing right now. And this is not just with India. A lot of developing nations across the world have been overlooking the fact that schools also need to be the centers of healthcare for children. That is why multiple international organizations, including UNESCO, UNICEF, WHO, and World Bank together have released a framework called FRESH, FRESH, which stands for Focusing Resources on Effective School Health. This is a framework that focuses on four key aspects: water, sanitation and environment, skill based health education, and school based health and nutrition services. This is a framework that actually encourages the school and the policymakers across the world to take up initiatives in this regard. Do remember this: FRESH, fresh. Now, the WHO also says that the school health services should be designed in such a manner that health education should be at the center of it. Now, let's talk in terms of India. What can we do, or what has been done in the past? Now, the one suggestion that the author here gives is the 15th Finance Commission gave specific grants for health sector. This should be utilized to give enough infrastructure in the schools as well. Build up better health infrastructure in schools, focus much more on preventive services to prevent the children from falling into bad habits. Also, make it a part of teaching. The teachers are those people who the students trust a lot. And that is why, as teachers, they also have an important role to discuss important issues such as adolescent sexual health, menstrual hygiene, so on and so forth, as a part of regular classroom teaching. Because coming from some other adult, the children might not really trust that adult. But with teachers, they have a special kind of a bond, and thus the teachers should be roped in for this kind of initiative as well. One other issue that the author is saying here is that when the government launches any such scheme, they usually only focus on government schools and they hope that the private schools will take care of themselves. But that is not the case. It is only the top end private schools that charge a hefty fee. Those are the ones that are actually adequately prepared to give all the services to their students. But what about the middle income schools? What about those schools that are private but don't charge a lot of fee and thus don't have a lot of good infrastructure? The government has a responsibility towards those schools as well, and thus the government should not restrict its services or its welfare schemes only for the government schools. The author here gives an ending thought that the National Health Policy of 2017 and the National Education Policy of 2020 should actually walk hand in hand, because both of these are focused on the welfare of our children since they are the future of the society. Now, I wanted to show you some other details about the fresh framework that these organizations have come up with. Also, I wanted to give you an example of an initiative that was launched by the Indian government specifically focusing on the health of the school children in India. Now, this is an infographic that is made on the fresh framework. It focuses on safe water and sanitation, school health nutrition service, health education, community partnerships, so on and so forth. As I said, the Indian government has started a program on its own, which is called the School Health Program. This was actually launched by the Prime Minister in 2018 as a part of Ayushman Bharat. It is a joint collaboration between the Union Ministry of Health, HRD Ministry, which is now called the Education Ministry, and the Department of School Education and Literacy. They have identified multiple themes under this program, such as reproductive health, HIV prevention, etc., to create more awareness amongst the students, because they don't find these kind of knowledge either in their homes, from their parents, or from media, etc. Thus, it is the responsibility of the school to give them such information. This is also in line with the goal number 3 of Sustainable Development Goals, which is to aspire to achieve good health and well-being of the people. There are some other initiatives taken by the government, such as National Curriculum Framework of 2005 is implementing the Adolescence Education Program as a part of National Population Education Project. We also have multiple schemes that the government is running on similar lines, such as the Rashtriya Kishore Swasthya Program, Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Program. Rashtriya Bal Swasthya Program is specifically aimed at identifying and preventing diseases in children up till the age of 18 years. So it's not that the government has not been taking these steps specifically for school education and school health, but a lot more needs to be done as per the author. The next article that we have here is focusing on India-Vietnam relations, specifically because this year has completed 50 years of diplomatic relations between India and Vietnam, because it was 1972 when India's diplomatic mission was actually established in Vietnam. Now, just to give you a brief history of Vietnam, just like we were under the rule of the British, Vietnam was under rule of the French. The Vietnamese fought for independence from the French in 1950s and they got their independence. Soon after, India became one of the first countries to actually establish relationships with Vietnam. In fact, our Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru soon visited Vietnam right after their independence. But it was only in 1972 that we actually set up our diplomatic mission in Vietnam. That is why 2022 marks the 50th anniversary of our bilateral relations. Now, if you look at Vietnam, it's a country that is not very large in size. It's not a country that we talk about a lot because we are much more obsessed with richer nations. We talk about the Western nations. Even when we talk about ASEAN, we talk about Singapore and those kind of nations. So Vietnam does not really come up very high when we talk about our neighboring nations or bilateral relations. But the fact is, it's a very, very significant nation for India for multiple reasons. One of those reasons mainly is countering China. Now, China is a common adversary of India and Vietnam. With India, we know we share a lot of border disputes with China. For Vietnam, on the other hand, they share the major South China Sea dispute with China. Vietnam is one of those nations that have a maritime boundary with China, and they also claim a certain region in the South China Sea, which China obviously does not appreciate. Thus, China and Vietnam have been at odds for many, many years now. This is where India comes into the picture. India obviously cannot supply so many weapons to Vietnam that they will be able to counter China. But yes, our defense relationship with Vietnam has improved considerably, and we have been trying to modernize their armed forces so they can actually put up some resistance to the Chinese advancement. Also, for India, Vietnam is particularly significant because our maritime trade is increasing at all the time. Right now, over 90% of India's external trade by volume is through sea. And that is why it is extremely important for India that the sea lines of communication and the open sea in the Indo-Pacific part remains free and no country dominates it. For that, India also has to maintain good relationship with other nations. Take this very practical example. Let's say there's an Indian ship that has a lot of goods going from India to some other country. In between the ocean, if the ship has some issue and needs certain assistance, India needs those nearby nations to be on good terms with us. Because it won't be easy for India to send help to our ships in the middle of the oceans. That is why, with maritime nations, with island nations specifically, having good relations is helpful because your trade and your safety of your coastal guard and your navy, etc., is promised by those nations. This is why Vietnam's relations with India are very, very significant. Ever since we started a Look East policy, which got converted to Act East policy, Vietnam has been at the center of India's focus. As you know, India and Vietnam are members in a lot of groups commonly. These include the BIMSTEC, the Indian Ocean Rim Association, so on and so forth. We also have the Mekong Ganga cooperation where both the countries are members. Now, there are a lot of things that are driving the two countries closer, that is India and Vietnam. China being the common adversary, India's trade being the second factor, and the third and the most significant factor is India's regional aspirations. One by one, only when India ensures that it has healthy and good relationship with its neighbor, that is when we can claim that we are actually a regional power, where we can settle disputes between multiple nations in our region, and this is our sphere of influence. For that also, Vietnam plays an extremely important role. Also, you would also remember the fact that over half of India's trade in the Indo-Pacific region actually passes through the South China Sea. South China Sea, as you know, is a water body which China claims completely and does not want any of the other nations like Philippines or Vietnam to have any say in that. This is also where we are putting our weight behind nations such as Vietnam. The relationship between the two sides has increased year after year. In 2007, we signed a strategic partnership. 2016, we saw a comprehensive strategic partnership. 2022, this year, we signed the joint mission for defense cooperation and a memorandum of understanding on mutual logistical support. India, as you know, in the past few years, has been focusing a lot on exporting our weapons. We saw Philippines already placing an order for the BrahMos missile. We also see a lot of possibility of Vietnam taking a lot of weapons from India. That is why we have offered them a line of credit to buy defense weapons from India itself. So for example, India will give them the weapon, They won't have to pay immediately, they can pay later on in installments. This is the defense line of credit. India initially gave a line of credit of $100 million. Recently, we finalized another $500 million defense line of credit to Vietnam to give them a push towards buying the Indian weapons. Not just this, India has also been given training for underwater combat operations to Vietnamese sailors in India's Vishakhapatnam. Our Defense Minister Shri Rajnath Singh recently went to Vietnam, where he handed over 12 high speed boats to Vietnam. As I said, there are a lot of common platforms where the two sides can come together and collaborate. Now, defense cooperation is one of those things which has been a lot in the news, specifically between India and Vietnam. Now, let me remind you, the Vietnamese government has not placed any big order from India so far, but this is at least a good beginning. With $100 million line of credit now converting to 500 more, this will only add up and increase Vietnam's defense buying from India. Because once a country starts buying weapons from another country and they start trusting the quality, that is when the orders increase in the future. And we are hoping for the same. Let me give you some other examples. Apart from the fact that we have been training their sailors in India, which we just discussed, Vietnam is also interested in India's Akash surface to air missile system and Dhruv advanced light helicopters and the BrahMos missile. Our Indian naval ship visited Ho Chi Minh City in 2020 to deliver the flood relief materials in the form of what you call as soft diplomacy. So it's not just that we want them to buy weapons from us or engage in economic trade, we're also there to help them when there is a need. This is when our defense minister was in Vietnam recently, as I said, to sign multiple agreements. This is where our defense and security cooperation was actually mentioned by our defense minister. Now, Vietnam is a very interesting country if you actually look at Asia. There are two nations specifically in Asia, Vietnam and Bangladesh, that have done quite an amazing job in the past few decades or so, especially when it comes to taking the business from the developed nations. Vietnam and Bangladesh, both of these have set up a lot of great merchandise industry. So a lot of big companies that you might have actually seen in Western nations like Nike, Puma, or even the most luxurious brands that actually sell you shoes, clothes, etc. A lot of those things are actually made in Vietnam and Bangladesh. You can see your mobile chargers. A lot of mobiles and mobile chargers, if you actually look behind them, it might say made in Vietnam. So Vietnam, specifically along with Bangladesh, has been increasing its focus on merchandise, electronic and electronic supplies. That is why if you actually look at the trade numbers and if you see Vietnam has been exporting close to $6.5 billion worth goods to India, except 2020, which was a pandemic year. Most of this is actually electronics and electronics instrument apart from merchandise. So merchandise, electronic instruments are the things that Bangladesh and Vietnam, both of them have worked very, very hard on. Also, when we say that India has an opportunity that if the businesses want to quit China, they will come to India, that is not truly the case. Even our economic survey some years ago had mentioned that companies that are actually coming out of China are not coming to India, they're actually going to Vietnam and Bangladesh. So these two nations have done very, very well in attracting companies from around the world. The next article that we have here is written by the Inspector General of Police under CRPF. Now, this is an article which is focusing on the issues that are faced by the CAPF, that is the Central Armed Police Forces. As you know, the CAPF work under the Home Ministry. The CAPF include the CRPF, the Border Security Force, the Indo-Tibetan Border Police, Central Industrial Security Force, Sashastra Seema Bal and the Assam Rifles. Now, the reason for writing this article is simple. The author is saying that while across the country, the people and the governments also give a lot of respect to defense personnel, which they actually deserve, but those people who are working in the police forces, specifically the CAPF, are not given the same kind of treatment, although they also have the same danger to their life and they also perform similar duties. He has given many examples. While different states across the country, for example, Telangana or UP or Haryana, etc., they give rewards worth crores and crores of rupees to defense personnel for their bravery, which are well deserved. When similar kind of a deed is actually done by a CAPF officer, either they don't get anything in return except for an award, or they are actually given something which is 1/100th of the award that is given to the defense personnel. He gives an example of Rajasthan, which is the only state that actually gives some monetary awards to police officers as well when they get the award. But their reward also is just 2 lakh rupees as compared to the defense personnel who gets 2.25 crore rupees for a Paramveer Chakra from Telangana government. Now, although he's saying that defense personnel deserve whatever they are getting, but the problem is that our attitude towards a police personnel, even though they also put their lives in danger, is very, very bad. And the police medals for gallantry, etc., are not given the kind of respect that they should. Now, the defense personnel, the medals that they get are called the Chakra Awards. As you know, the Paramveer Chakra, the Ashok Chakra, the Mahavir Chakra, the Kirti Chakra, all these Chakra Awards are specifically for the defense personnel. On the other hand, the people in the police services get different types of awards. Those awards are usually called the police awards. So there's the President's Police and Fire Service Medal for Gallantry, there's the President's Police Medal for Gallantry, so on and so forth. Now, while the Chakra awards are specifically kept for defense personnel, the CAPF can also get these awards only if they are in those operations where they are working under the army. So if there is an army operation going on and the people from the Central Armed Police Forces are called to be a part of that operation, only then they can get the Chakra award. Otherwise, they are not eligible to get those. What he is demanding in this article is that the government of India should set clear guidelines who can get the Chakra series awards and when, and also which government should give how much money or give how much awards financially or in the form of property, etc., to the award winners. He is saying that just like we have the Chakra awards for the army, we can also have Chakra awards for the police forces. We can have something called Sarvottam Police Chakra, Uttam Police Chakra, and the Police Chakra for the police forces. This is a suggestion that he is giving to the government through this article, that the government of India should work towards this, because in the past there has been a lot of discrimination against the people working in the CAPF. Now, as the article also tells you, these are the 7 forces that are a part of CAPF. They are the ones that are collectively called the CAPF. Assam Rifles, Border Security Force, the CISF, CRPF, Sashastra Seema Bal, the NSG, and the ITBP. Now, the CAPF and their issues are not new. In fact, they have been facing multiple issues, and it's not just about the medals. Let me give you some examples of the issues that they have been facing, which have been raised over the past few years. First major issue is about the working conditions. You might have seen a lot of articles written about it, and this has been accepted by the government as well. In 2017, the Standing Committee on Home Affairs said that there are a lot of concerns regarding the working conditions of border guarding forces. The committee said that their normal working days are 16 to 18 hours a day with almost no time to rest or sleep. They said that the personnel of the CAPF are not being treated at par with the armed forces in terms of pay and other allowances. Even there are many operational bottlenecks in the CAPF. They do have their training institutions set up, but this has not been upgraded. There are also a lot of roadblocks in modernization. While most focus is on modernizing the defense personnel, a lot of budget is given to the defense ministry for the same, but the budget for the home ministry is not utilized for modernization of the CAPF. So they still remain much behind the other forces and even the enemies against whom that they have to fight. They have also been given a lot of responsibility from the state governments. Although the states do have their police, but a lot of states are dependent on the CAPF even for daily law and order issues. Then we also have a problem of cadre management. Each of these CAPF have their own cadre of officers, but still they are headed by officers of the IPS, Indian Police Service, which is a very discouraging sign from them. That is, even when they get their promotion at the very top, they will always be an IPS officer, which obviously the CAPF cadre do not appreciate. These are some of the issues that the CAPF are still facing in the country. The next article is on a news that has been the global headlines in the past couple of weeks. That is the unprecedented heat wave across Europe. The European continent has never seen such heat wave in its entire history, and that is why a lot of people are actually passing away due to the heat stroke which Europe has never seen, and it is across all the Western European nations. On 19th of July, UK posted its highest ever temperature, which has crossed 40 degrees Celsius. In France, Spain, Portugal, temperatures are between 42 to 46 degrees. In Italy, where they have the Po River Basin, which is considered as a Europe's food bowl because of its high vegetation, that region has not received any rainfall for over 200 days. This is a situation for which no one in Europe was prepared. Now, before you start thinking, what is the big deal with 40 degrees Celsius? Every year in Delhi, you have temperatures of 45, 46 degrees Celsius. Then what is a big deal? But the big deal is that it is unprecedented in Europe. European continent and European citizens are not used to this, because of which even in UK, it's an extremely rich country, but even there very few places actually have air conditioners. No one has air conditioners in UK because they don't need it. Also, the construction in UK and in other European nations is done in such a way that the houses in Europe are actually built to retain heat, because these are the houses which are actually in the cold temperatures. So their function is to retain heat and make the people inside the house feel more warm. These houses in 40 degrees Celsius temperature are just not giving any relief to the people who are living there, even without air conditioners. And that is why we see a lot of problems. It's not just the houses. Other infrastructure also in Europe has not been designed to sustain such high temperatures. That is why you see a lot of fires on the railway tracks. You see the flights not being able to land because the highways are just not in the right condition. All of that because the construction was never done to sustain these kind of temperatures. Now, there's only one possible reason for all of this, that is global warming because of increased human activity. There are many people who still don't agree to this. For example, the US also is facing such heat waves. But in US the situation is different because they are used to it in some parts and they do have air conditioners, etc. In US, however, the Republican Party still does not believe that it is because of global warming. They still believe it is just a rumor by nations such as China to actually force the developed nations to cut down on their industrialization. Thus, Europe and USA, both of them are facing a very tough time. Also, because of the current wind patterns that have emerged, what we see is that Western Europe has been termed as the heat dome, which is a low pressure area which is attracting a lot of hot air from northern Africa, and they are just not used to it. As I said, not a lot of houses in UK and other Western European nations have air conditioners. They are just not used to it. Also, Europe was thinking that now that the winters are gone and the summers are here, they would not need to import a lot of gas from Russia. As we had discussed earlier many times, Europe imports a lot of natural gas from Russia for central heating, mainly in their winters, because they have a lot of harsh winters. And they thought now we won't need it because the winters are going. But little did they know that they again need natural gas now for cooling purposes. And that is why there is an entire policy debate in Europe whether we should go back to Russia or not, or what is the other alternative that we have. Because all of them after the Ukraine war started to boycott Russia, even including Germany. The situation has become so bad that in Germany we have a political party called the Green Party. As the name suggests, it talks about environment. Even they are saying that domestic coal production should increase and we should not buy Russian gas. Such is the problem that we are facing in Europe right now. The vegetation patterns have also changed. The river water is actually declining and the European nations are just not ready for it. In nations such as India, where we know that the heat wave can become very bad, there are places that are built in the public where people can actually cover themselves. So there are a lot of tree sheds, there are a lot of other kind of sheds that are made where people can sit. On public places, you can see water being offered in India and in other developing nations where there is a lot of heat wave. In Europe, that is not the case, again because people are not used to it. So if you are out on the streets in Europe, there are not many places where you can actually take a shed. or there are not many places where water will be offered to you for drinking. So they are just not made for this kind of an environment, and that is why they're having a very, very hard time. Recently, the UN General Secretary, in fact, made a very, very serious statement. He said, it is either collective action or collective suicide. Please feel free to use this statement in your mains examination by quoting the name of UN General Secretary as well. This is a tweet that London Airport actually made. Just see this. Flights are suspended to allow for an essential runway repair after high surface temperatures caused a small section to lift. So bad is the situation that even the runways are not in a situation that the flights can land there. Again, this is from London Tube, that is London Metro Rail, which says avoid travelling. There are extreme hot weather conditions here. So Europe is going through something that they have never witnessed in their life. Even if you go to Europe, you will realize that the people usually wear dark colored clothes. So most of the clothes that they have are black, brown, grey, so that they can retain heat. And even these kind of small changes have been giving a very, very hard time in this weather to Europeans. The next article that we have here is focusing on an international report on India's MMR, that is a maternal mortality rate. Now, as you know, maternal mortality rate in simple terms means the number of mothers who die from complications in pregnancy for every 1 lakh live births. Now, the reason for this particular article is that a few months back, the Indian government published some numbers about MMR in India state-wise. Now, an international report has come out. This is a report from PLOS Global Public Health Journal. This report contradicts the Indian numbers. This report actually says that in India, the government numbers of MMR are very, very low as compared to the real situation. They are saying that healthcare, contraceptive devices, nutrition can improve the situation drastically, but the Indian government and the Indian authorities are not showing the true numbers. For example, the report says that 70% of the districts in India have reported MMR of above 70. Now, why are we taking the 70 number level? Because 70 is the target to be achieved under the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. And I will show you the Indian numbers also so that you can compare. This international report says that many of the districts in South India and Maharashtra have achieved an MMR of under 70, but many others have not, which also shows that there are very, very large inequalities amongst the states, even within the state which are good performers like Tamil Nadu, Kerala, Karnataka, etc. The international report says that a lot of work still needs to be done. On the other hand, if you look at the Indian government report, that says that only Assam has an MMR of above 200, while the international report says that not just Assam, multiple states in India actually have an MMR of above 200. So there is still a lot of discrepancy between the two reports that have come up. The international report obviously is showing much higher numbers. The Indian report and numbers under the sample registration system have given much lower numbers. But both the reports agree that if we have to control the situation, we have to focus and improve the access to contraceptions, provide much better healthcare, antenatal care, etc. Now, this is a graph from the Indian government report. As far as the government of India, this is the situation right now that we have in terms of maternal death. If you can actually see the maternal death numbers on different states, there are only 7 states in India that have high maternal mortality. High means 130 or more. In that also, only Assam has been targeted as a state of over 200 MMR. Then the orange colored states are the ones which have a MMR of 100 to 130, and then the blue colored ones have controlled their MMR to below 100. These are the important findings of Indian government. The Indian government released the numbers recently. When I say recently, I mean March of this year, through Registrar General of India's sample registration system. The highlights of the report are that 7 states have already achieved the 70 target. Kerala, Maharashtra, Telangana, Tamil Nadu, Andhra Pradesh, Jharkhand and Gujarat. They have already achieved the target of bringing the MMR below 70. Then we also have certain other states which are very, very near to achieving MMR. That is Karnataka, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, West Bengal, Punjab. These are the states that can achieve the 70 MMR in the coming years. The one state of concern that has been shown here is Assam with 205 mmR and some other states which have an mmR of over 150. While the international report does not agree, they say that many other states also have very, very high mmR in India. These are the important articles on the Hindu newspaper today. Now a couple of practice questions. Number one. Our relationship with Vietnam is much more than a bilateral relation. It is a step towards achieving regional eminence. Do you agree? Elaborate. Second. With education being the sole focus of policymakers, health in schools has long been neglected. What initiatives have been taken by the government to plug in these lacunae? Both these questions have to be answered within 250 words each. Thank you so much for watching the CNA video.